Australia. It's nature's favorite murder playground. Sure, the land down under has surfing and barbecues, but it's also crawling with deadly spiders, raging fires, brutal terrain, and wildlife that wants you dead for just showing up. We'll be breaking down every morbid detail on today's episode of the Infographic Show. These are all the ways Australia can kill you, starting with deadly animals. Now let's not beat around the bush here. Seriously, we'll be heading off to the bush later. When you clicked on this video, you expected the 4 S's: spiders, snakes, sharks, and saltwater crocodiles. So let's start with the 8-legged freaks that actually have enough venom to have you shaking hands with Steve Irwin by day's end. The spider that best manages to fuse the concepts of being deadly and downright scary looking is the funnel web. There are actually 38 types of funnel web spiders across the country, but the most common and deadly is the Sydney funnel web, known for being large and delivering multiple bites with each attack. They deliver a potent payload of lethal venom that'll kill you in a matter of hours, if you don't get the antidote, as 13 recorded people have found out the hard way. You might think that's a surprisingly low number of fatalities, especially given that these guys bite 30 to 40 Australians every year. But while a funnel web bite is definitely going to wreck your day, the antidote program first started back in 1981 and has thankfully saved a lot of lives. So while for many spending all day milking the venom out of aggressive spiders might seem like a nightmare job, it is a profession that's prevented a lot of unnecessary fatalities. But while they may look gnarlier, the funnel web doesn't hold a candle to the lethality of the redback spider, one of the deadliest arachnids in the world. They're tiny creatures less than 3 inches in size, with a red marking on their back. Every bite from them delivers a neurotoxin that can kill you if you don't get the antivenom as quickly as possible. Around 2,000 people are bitten by redbacks every year, with 250 cases receiving antivenom. But thankfully, there has only been 1 death from a redback bite since 1979, thanks to those hardworking spider milkers. We will share a horrifying redback fact with you, though. When you're going to the bathroom, especially if it's an outdoor bathroom, just make sure to check before you sit. Redbacks have been known to cozy up under toilet seats. Now let's take a look at how a snake might turn you from a tourist into a venom-spiked corpse in the Australian Outback. Incidents of snake bites in Australia range from 3 to 18 per 100,000 people, with a death rate of 0.03 per 100,000 per year, making them a lot deadlier than the spiders. Coming in second in the extremely competitive battle for Australia's most venomous snake is the eastern brown snake, mostly found in, you guessed it, eastern Australia. But these guys also show up in central Australia, so you're not escaping on a geographical technicality. At a formidable 5 feet, these guys are responsible for more deaths than any other snake group in the entire country. They are fast, operate during daylight hours, and are extremely territorial if you happen to invade their habitat. And what's more, studies have shown that their venom gets more potent as they age, like a fine wine. Except, well, it'll kill you. But the native taipan makes the brown snake look downright cuddly. Every single one of its bites injects enough venom to kill 100 people, making it one of the most venomous snakes in the entire world, let alone Australia. The inland taipan has deadlier venom, but their cousin, the coastal taipan, is a lot more aggressive, with claims that its bite was 100% fatal before the antivenom was first developed back in 1954. However, despite the theoretical deadliness of the inland taipan's venom, it's not actually had a recorded fatality thanks to the fact that, well, it's actually reasonably chill around humans. But you shouldn't push your luck and try to become kill number 1. Saltwater crocodiles, on the other hand, are far deadlier reptiles than the snakes. They are the largest reptiles on Earth, in fact, and they boast a kill count of 44 people between 1975 and the end of 2024, though if we are being realistic, especially in modern Australia's early colonial days, they've likely chowed down on a lot more people than that. Salties, as the locals call them, strike fast and they don't let go. If you've ever made the terrible mistake of venturing into croc-infested waters and you get pulled into a death roll, your last moments are probably better spent making peace with your deity of choice. It's a running theme that aquatic animals in Australia are actually a lot more dangerous than their land-dwelling counterparts. And in a country that's famous for its gorgeous beaches and surfing culture, there's a decent chance of both locals and tourists running afoul of some of these nasty customers. From the big to the small, one of the most dangerous sea animals is the irukandji jellyfish, minuscule creatures at around 1 inch in size. Think about the size of a penny and you're close. However, they can cause between 50 and 100 hospitalizations each year, as their venomous stingers can cause irukandji syndrome, a condition that in extreme cases can result in the victim experiencing a fatal brain hemorrhage. They send 50 to 100 people to the hospital each year and have confirmed to have killed at least 2 people. The mysterious deaths of at least 3 tourists have also been linked to the jellyfish. Compare this to the confirmed 79 victims of the Irukandji's bigger, uglier cousin, the box jellyfish. This brainless creature has tentacles that can measure up to 9.8 feet long, and they're covered in millions of stingers. If you're lucky and you happen to get touched by those squishy death ropes, you'll just be leaving in excruciating pain with long red welts across your body. If you are unlucky, you'll be dead from heart failure in minutes and be found floating sometime later. You really don't want to touch one of these things. Now maybe you want to stay safe and keep to the shallows. None of those monsters can get you if the water never goes above your knees, right? Sadly, that is wrong, because there are plenty of deadly creatures lurking down there too. If you don't carefully watch where you step, you might just step onto a stonefish, a well-camouflaged creature with a face that only a mother could love. It also happens to be the most venomous fish in the world, and its habit of hiding under the sand to wait for prey means that any unlucky swimmers who step on their backs will feel excruciating pain as the creature's spines get stuck into the sole of their foot. The stonefish can survive out of water for 24 hours, but if you don't get some antivenom quickly, a stonefish sting can kill you in around 6 to 8 hours. Though even the stonefish gives you better chances than facing off against the blue-ringed octopus. Despite only measuring 4.7 to 8 inches long, this tiny and undeniably cute cephalopod packs a punch. The venom in just one of these little guys can kill 26 people, and there is no known cure either. While the bites are rare unless you're stupid enough to step on one or pick it up, the venom is said to be 1,200 times more potent a toxin than cyanide. But whatever you do, don't let its stingers sink into you or you really might be a goner. But one of the deadliest sea animals of all is also strangely one of the prettiest. If you saw a dainty conical shell with a nice pattern in the water, you might just be tempted to reach over and pick it up. And in doing so, you might just doom yourself. And that's because it could be a cone snail, an aquatic snail with a venomous stinger that releases conotoxins, which can cause paralysis, respiratory failure, and death. And unlike so many of the other venomous animals on the list, there is no known antivenom. They're responsible for at least 27 human deaths in recorded history. And of course, there are the sharks, which have an approximate 237 Australian deaths to their name between 1791 and 2018. But these numbers are a little misleading because it's difficult to break those numbers down into their individual shark species. The first recorded cases took place literally centuries ago. While great white sharks have the most name recognition thanks to Jaws, it is the tiger shark that you really need to worry about. It's the second largest predatory shark in the world, and it's proportionally the cause of the most fatalities. And they will eat literally anything they can get their jaws around, including you, if you pick a bad place to practice your front crawl. You might be feeling a little nervous after hearing all this, but aside from every species of shark working together for centuries, the kills from all these animals combined are rookie numbers compared to the real deadliest animal in Australia, the horse. No, we're not kidding. In modern Australian history, 222 fatalities have been attributed to the humble horse, mostly people dying from falling off while riding them. You'll never look at a racetrack the same way again. But even if you somehow survive all these terrifying creatures, you might meet a premature end at the hands of nature itself. Deadly nature. That's right, because in Australia, sometimes the country itself can find ways to wipe you out without even trying. Starting, of course, with the extreme heat that the land down under has become famous for. They don't call it the sunburnt country for nothing. One of the biggest risks during Australia's frequent periods of extreme heat is heat stroke, where the body overheats enough that it's unable to cool itself. According to the Australian Centers for Disease Control, the combined forces of heat stroke, heat exhaustion, and dehydration have killed more people than any other natural hazard in Australia. Some have even dubbed it the silent killer, with economically disadvantaged areas of the country being hit the hardest. According to the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare, extreme weather-related hospitalizations spiked at over 1,000 cases every 3 years, with the spikes becoming progressively higher. Extreme heat had the biggest impact on hospitalizations and deaths. It accounted for over 7,100 injury hospitalizations and 293 deaths in the 10-year period analyzed. The heat also brings some unpleasant customers along with it, like mosquitoes who come bearing gifts, specifically dangerous diseases. In the summer months, mosquitoes breed like crazy and go on the hunt for food, carrying conditions like Ross River virus, Japanese encephalitis, Murray Valley encephalitis, Barma forest virus, and Kunjin virus. Isn't it nice to have a choice? And it's not just the heat, it's also the light. Now, we're not kidding when we say that the sun itself in Australia is actually more dangerous than it is in most other places. That's mostly because it's closer to the ozone hole. That means it has less defense from the dangerous UV radiation that causes conditions like skin cancer. But it's more than just that. According to skin cancer expert Dr. Ahmad Hassanian, quote, "During summer, the Earth's orbit brings Australia closer to the sun, resulting in an additional 7% solar UV intensity. Coupled with our clearer atmospheric conditions, this means that Australians are exposed to up to 15% more UV than Europeans. So even the sun wants you to die." And of course, there are other horrifying outcomes of all of this sun and heat that can put you in danger of death. We're of course talking about the bushfires. Since 1851, bushfires in Australia have killed over 800 people, and the animal death count is in the billions. And as climate change causes longer, drier, hotter summers, the inevitable result is that they'll happen more often and likely be deadlier when they do. Most recently, the bushfires that spanned from 2019 to 2020, known as Black Summer, caused 33 deaths by the flames itself and 417 from smoke inhalation. The fires were so horrific that they turned the skies in Australia red for a period of time and made the air quality dangerously poor, shortening who knows how many lives in the process. And the one thing we can sadly promise is that it's extremely unlikely this will be the last event of this magnitude to happen. And if it's not the dry doing you in, it's the wet, even when the water isn't full of stonefish, tiger sharks, and blue-ringed octopi. Flooding has gotten more severe across Australia thanks to climate change. In early 2025, record rainfall in the state of New South Wales caused flooding that killed 4 people and drove thousands out of their homes. This is yet another thing that, surprise, surprise, is likely to get worse as time marches inexorably on. These dangers can come for you anywhere in Australia, but there is nowhere in the sunburnt country that you're more likely to die than the Outback. This is where everything else we discussed comes together to be even deadlier combined. The Outback is even more remote than the bush, with large parts of it remaining relatively untouched, with vast and complex ecosystems. In fact, by some counts, it actually takes up around 80% of the whole country. And it'll also absolutely murder you if you're not careful. Not only are the grand majority of animals we've discussed present here, along with all the dangerous weather phenomena, you can actually add untrustworthy terrain, remoteness, and a tendency to get lost to the smorgasbord of death. Miles away from more developed urban areas, if you get injured alone, there's a very good chance that you will die, and you wouldn't be the first. According to some sources, there are around 40 deaths in the Outback every single year, and the majority of these just come from simple human mistakes. Bringing the wrong equipment, not bringing food supplies and water, driving dangerously and crashing in the process, or just going out into an area that is too far removed from your support network without telling anyone. With so much ground to cover, the chances of heat stroke or lack of water killing you before a rescue team can find you is scarily high. But if the spiders, the snakes, the sharks, the fire, and the dehydration don't get you, well then you might just be unlucky when it comes to the people. That's right, human dangers. Given that plenty of these fair dinkum folk are the descendants of violent criminals exiled by the British Empire, it's no surprise that some Australians might have a little bit of a violent streak. Just ask any American tourist who got drunk and tried out his best Crocodile Dundee impression at the wrong rural pub. That's not a knife. One of Australia's most famous folk heroes is Ned Kelly, a bushranger. Think the Aussie equivalent of a Wild West outlaw, and gang leader most famous for building himself an old-timey Iron Man suit to deflect the bullets of pursuing lawmen. And there are plenty of folks keeping that grand tradition alive. We mean the crime stuff, not making a low-tech mech suit, sadly. Sydney especially has a nasty reputation for street gangs who are all too eager to use their rivals to paint the hot Australian sidewalks red. Ever since the 1920s, when razor gangs roamed the streets. Well, what are razor gangs, you ask? Well, after the introduction of the Pistol Licensing Act in 1927, it became impractical to open carry a piece if you planned on using it for criminal purposes, so all the local gangsters started slashing each other up with razors instead. Sydney gangland wars in the 1980s, when gangsters were more than happy to use guns again, took things to a new level. Rival drug pushers regularly shot each other down in the street for extra territory, and they really didn't care if civilians were standing in the way of their bullets. It was a huge mess of corruption, intimidation, drugs, and violence. And you may think, well, that's all in the 80s, it's not like it's a problem these days. We gotta stop you there. There were fears of another gang war starting back in late May 2025. And that's when the awesomely named Task Force Falcon intercepted some hitmen with pistols and rifles in their car. connected to a number of both attempted and successful killings, like the tragic case of 23-year-old plumber John Versace, who was shot dead outside of his home on May 19th. A viral video of the frantic moments after the shooting shook up the whole nation. Maybe you might just consider avoiding Sydney altogether. After all, there's some nice stuff down in Melbourne too. But the Melbourne gangland killings, which ran from January 1998 to August 2010, resulted in 36 successful mob hits across the city. So maybe you'll head to Canberra. But you shouldn't, because Canberra's boring. But even if you're not worried about being caught in the middle of some mob drive-by, Australia has had some of history's gnarliest serial killers. People backpacking out in the bush might be unlucky enough to run into someone like Ivan Millet, also known as the Backpack Killer. He robbed and murdered 7 tourists hiking through the bush and was even one of the major inspirations behind the Wolf Creek horror franchise. But if you leave the bush to instead kill some time in a small town, you might instead have ended up in the clutches of a psychopath like John Bunting, the ringleader of the Snowtown murders. Bunting and his several accomplices tortured and killed 12 people. Most of the bodies were hidden inside barrels in a local abandoned bank. Some of the details of these murders are almost too awful to even recount. And just in case we're giving you second thoughts about that Australian vacation that you've just booked, it's worth mentioning that being murdered by a gangster or a serial killer is at least statistically improbable. But let's head back to that imaginary Australian pub for just a second. Maybe you looked at a guy funny, or you wore the wrong team colors on game night, or if you're really unlucky, you might find yourself falling victim to a uniquely Australian form of violence, the King Hit, rebranded by the Australian government as the Coward's Punch. This is the local Aussie variant of the Sucker Punch, a powerful strike to the head or neck when the victim doesn't see it coming, often resulting in unconsciousness or death. It's a serious issue in Australia that has sadly claimed multiple lives, 172 people since the year 2000. Most of these fatalities have happened while both the victims and the attackers drank a little too much at clubs and pubs. Like 18-year-old Thomas Kelly, killed with a single punch back in 2012 in King's Cross, Sydney's slightly seedy club district. Or 19-year-old Pat Cronin, murdered by a single punch to the back of the head in Melbourne's Diamond Creek back in 2016. He was trying to pull his friend out of a massive 30-person drunken brawl. And given that excessive drinking is a huge part of Aussie culture, with more than 42 million annual incidents of binge drinking and a fifth of the population consuming alcohol at high-risk levels, a lot of people are making poor choices while under the influence. We're beginning to think this video probably won't be getting a sponsorship from Tourism Australia. We already told you Australia is dangerous. Even the people were built differently. So if you want to meet the guy who basically became a national legend by getting into shootouts with the police, check out Australia's most notorious outlaw, Ned Kelly, or click on this video instead.